Imagine walking down the street, minding your own business, when a racist cop targets you for no reason. Your life turned upside down in an instant. This gripping story of injustice, redemption, and shocking twists will leave you speechless. Hit that subscribe button now to dive into this unforgettable tale. And join our community for more powerful narratives that challenge the status quo. Racist cop wrongfully arrests black man on the street 30 minutes later. He deeply regrets it. The sun hung low over the cracked sidewalks of downtown Ashwood, a small city where the air always carried the faint hum of tension. Marcus Tate, a 32-year-old software engineer, walked briskly, his earbuds pumping a smooth jazz track to drown out the distant wail of sirens. His dark skin glistened with a light sheen of sweat under the late afternoon heat, his tailored blazer slung over one shoulder. Marcus was heading to a local coffee shop to meet a client, a routine he'd followed dozens of times. His mind was on the presentation he'd prepared, the one that could land him a promotion at the tech firm where he'd worked for 5 years. He didn't notice the police cruiser idling at the corner of 5th and Maple. Its occupant, Officer Daniel Hargrove, watching him with narrowed eyes. Hargrove, a 15-year veteran of the Ashwood PD, had a reputation among his colleagues for being old. At 42, he wore his badge like a crown, his square jaw set in a permanent scowl. To him, the streets were a battlefield, and he'd long since decided who the enemy was. Marcus, with his confident stride and polished appearance, didn't fit Hargrove's mental checklist of acceptable. The officer's radio crackled with a vague report of a robbery suspect in the area. A male, mid-30s, dark clothing. Marcus's navy button-up and khakis were close enough for Hargrove, who didn't need much to justify a stop. He flipped on the cruiser's lights, pulled onto the street, and screeched to a halt beside Marcus. "Hey, you!" Hargrove barked, stepping out of the car, his hand resting on the holster at his hip. Marcus froze, pulling out his earbuds, confusion etching his face. The street wasn't busy, but a few passers-by slowed, their phones already out, sensing something was about to unfold. "Hands where I can see 'em." Hargrove's voice was sharp, laced with an authority that brooked no argument. Marcus raised his hands slowly, his heart pounding. He'd been stopped before twice in college, once a year ago, but never like this, with such raw hostility in the officer's eyes. "Officer, what's this about?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. He knew the drill. Stay calm, don't escalate. But Hargrove wasn't listening. "Turn around, face the wall," he ordered, gesturing toward a brick storefront. Marcus complied, his jaw tight. The officer patted him down roughly, yanking his wallet from his pocket and tossing it onto the sidewalk. "Got ID?" Hargrove demanded, though he hadn't even glanced at the wallet. Marcus nodded, explaining he was just heading to a meeting, but Hargrove cut him off. "You match the description of a robbery suspect. You're coming with me." Marcus's stomach dropped. "Robbery? Officer, I'm a software engineer. I work 3 blocks from here. Can I just—" Hargrove's hand shot up, silencing him. "You're deaf. I said you're coming with me." Before Marcus could protest further, Hargrove grabbed his arm, spun him around, and slapped cuffs on his wrists. The metal bit into Marcus's skin as he was shoved toward the cruiser. A small crowd had gathered now, some murmuring, others filming. An older woman shook her head, muttering, "Not again." Marcus caught her eye, a silent plea, but she looked away. At the precinct, Marcus was led to a holding cell, the door clanging shut behind him. The room was stark, smelling of stale coffee and disinfectant. He sat on the metal bench, his mind racing. He'd done nothing wrong, yet here he was, stripped of his freedom because of one man's snap judgment. Hargrove, meanwhile, was back at his desk, filling out paperwork with a smug grin. To him, this was just another day, another threat off the streets. He didn't bother checking Marcus's ID or running his name through the system. Why would he? His gut told him everything he needed to know, but the wheels of fate were already turning. Unbeknownst to Hargrove, one of the bystanders who'd filmed the arrest was a local activist named Lena Carter. Lena, a 28-year-old law student, with a fiery passion for justice, had been documenting police misconduct in Ashwood for years. Her X account, with over 50,000 followers, was a platform for exposing systemic abuses. As Marcus sat in his cell, Lena was uploading the video of his arrest, her caption blazing, "Another black man wrongfully arrested in Ashwood. This is Officer Daniel Hargrove. Demand justice now. Hashtag Ashwood PD. Hashtag End Police Brutality." The post spread like wildfire, retweeted by local news outlets and amplified by national figures within minutes. Back at the precinct, Hargrove's phone buzzed with notifications. He ignored them at first, but his partner, Officer Sarah New, glanced at her own phone and paled. "Dan, you need to see this," she said, shoving her screen in his face. The video was unmistakable. Hargrove's aggressive tone, Marcus's calm compliance, the cuffs clicking into place. The comments were brutal, calling Hargrove everything from a racist to a disgrace to the badge. His smugness faltered, replaced by a flicker of unease. "It's just noise," he muttered, brushing it off. "They'll forget about it by tomorrow." He was wrong. By the time Marcus had been in the cell for 20 minutes, the video had reached the desk of Ashwood's police Chief Maria Delgado. Delgado, a nonsense woman who'd fought her way up through a male-dominated department, was already under pressure to address the city's history of racial profiling. She watched the video, her jaw tightening. She knew Hargrove's type cops, who thought they were untouchable, who let bias cloud their judgment. She also knew Marcus's name, not from any criminal record, but from a community tech initiative he'd spearheaded last year. Delgado picked up her phone and called the precinct's desk sergeant. "Release Marcus Tate." Now, as Marcus was let out of the cell, his cuffs removed, he was still processing what had happened. The desk sergeant mumbled an apology, but Marcus barely heard it. His mind was on the meeting he'd missed, the client who'd likely never call again, the humiliation of being treated like a criminal in broad daylight. He stepped outside the precinct, blinking into the fading sunlight, and saw Lena waiting for him. "You're Marcus, right?" she asked, her voice warm but urgent. "I'm the one who posted the video. People are furious. We're not letting this go." Marcus was too drained to respond fully, but he nodded, grateful for her intervention. Lena handed him a bottle of water and explained how the video had gone viral, sparking protests outside the precinct. As they spoke, Hargrove was inside, facing a different reality. Delgado had called him into her office, her expression like stone. "You didn't even check his ID, Daniel," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You saw a black man and made up your mind. You're suspended, effective immediately. And if I find out you've done this before, you're done." Hargrove's face reddened, but he didn't argue. He knew the tide was turning against him. The video had already been picked up by national news, with pundits dissecting his actions. His name was trending on X, alongside hashtags like #JusticeForMarcus and #FireHargrove. But the real twist was yet to come, and it would shake Hargrove to his core. Unbeknownst to anyone at the precinct, Marcus wasn't just a software engineer. He was also the son of Judge Evelyn Tate, a federal judge known for her relentless pursuit of justice. Evelyn had been out of town at a conference, but when she saw Lena's video, forwarded by a colleague, her blood boiled. She was on the next flight back to Ashwood, already drafting a formal complaint to the Department of Justice. By the time she landed, the story had exploded, with news anchors debating the systemic issues in Ashwood's police department. Marcus, meanwhile, was trying to piece his life back together. He met with Lena and a group of activists at a community center, where they planned a press conference to demand accountability. Marcus wasn't one for the spotlight, but he felt a fire growing inside him. This wasn't just about him, it was about every person who'd been profiled, harassed, or worse. He agreed to speak, his voice steady as he recounted the arrest, the fear, the humiliation. The crowd listened in rapt silence, their anger palpable. Hargrove, now on suspension, was at home, watching the press conference on TV. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. He'd always justified his actions as keeping the streets safe, but seeing Marcus speak, hearing the pain in his voice, chipped away at his certainty. Then came the bombshell. A reporter asked Marcus about his family, and he mentioned his mother, Judge Evelyn Tate. Hargrove's heart sank. He knew Evelyn's reputation. She was a force of nature, and she wouldn't let this slide. The next day, Evelyn arrived at the precinct, her presence commanding. She met with Delgado, who assured her that Hargrove would face consequences. But Evelyn wasn't satisfied with the suspension. She filed a federal lawsuit against the department, naming Hargrove specifically, and called for a broader investigation into Ashwood's policing practices. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through the city. With protests growing louder and more organized, Hargrove's life began to unravel. His colleagues distanced themselves, his neighbors avoided him, and his inbox was flooded with hate mail. But the final twist came from within. Sarah Nguyen, his partner, had been quietly gathering evidence of